you have a good point, and he is similar to Jamal, where people are wondering if he's like injured or if he's not right. He isn't fully healed from the calf strain because Jamal also is not looking super comfortable. But I didn't see the game live, and I was kind of
Hmm.
tracking Nuggets fans' reactions just by like following you and other people on Twitter, and I saw some mixed stuff. Ryan Blackburn even said he
Can
liked.
you wait? Which game are you talking about?
I'm talking about Canada versus Australia.
Okay, so they've played just, for the audience, Canada has played Australia and their first game was versus Greece.
My biggest takeaway from watching Jamal versus Australia, I was expecting to see like a really bad game from Jamal where he's either like forcing it or, just like standing around kind of, which you saw some of. Obviously, he's not going to be as on ball when you have SGA on the team, who he played with sometimes. When he came in versus Australia, they were playing smaller and they were just really forcing the ball to Trey Lyles, like to just like get those points. So it's kind of like that contextual matchup reasoning why Jamal wasn't necessarily like getting shots up because he only finished with 5 points. And so you're left thinking like, did he only have 5 points because he had a bad game or like, what's the deal? I just think like there was reasons why he didn't score that many points. And it's also FIBA ball. Your points are going to be lower as it is. So I just wasn't as concerned about Jamal as some people were because I just don't think Canada's treating him like he's Jamal Murray on the Nuggets. I think like he's kind of come in with this mentality that I'm kind of a role player. I'm maybe like the fourth or fifth offensive option, depending. And he's not like trying to be super aggressive. Where if he was, we may be seeing different kinds of results if he was really like trying. He did have a kind of cool pull up three, but otherwise his shot is not super convincing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference between the Greece game and the Australia game was actually quite noticeable, especially like you can see the progression from how he looked at the end of the playoffs to in exhibition play. Actually, I think in exhibitions he looked worse than he did at the end of the playoffs, which was why I think everybody was so concerned then, in part because he missed an entire exhibition game because he was still like ramping back up, and Canada only had three. Most of the other countries that we talked about had four or five exhibition games, at least that were, broadcast. So Canada didn't have that many, so we were like worried, like, is he going to be able to ramp up? Like, why does he look like this? And it's one thing to sort of give a guy a pass, like it's summer play, not everybody's ramped up, all this stuff. But when you're on particularly a team like Team Canada, or you can talk about if like someone was on like Team USA, you have the contrast of other NBA players. It's like, well, they all also just ended their seasons, and you know, not you can give him also the injury pass on top of that. But I think the sort of excuse of, well, everybody's like ramping up, blah blah blah. It's like, well, everyone's baseline seems to be a little bit higher than yours right now, so let's try to raise that floor. But I did actually think he looked pretty good, like physically, in the game versus Australia. In particular, he was moving really well off the ball. I actually think he's been pretty good at that, even through exhibition play, where I thought he looked maybe like the worst of anything that he did the last 8 months. He was moving well off the ball, trying to get open, all this stuff. But like I've said before, Canada doesn't have a lot of good passers. I actually think of anybody that gets significant minutes on this team, he's the best, whether it's primary or connective passer on that team. And so part of it's like they don't see him, part of it's like the ball is like swung like way
Hmm.
out of where he got to get open. So that's not like blaming the other players on Team Canada. That's just like why he's not getting shots up. I actually think that
Yeah.
he's moving quite well to get open to be in position to do that. Not like a KCP or an MPJ for sure, where that's like their whole job. I don't actually see too much of him just standing in one place, unless it's a play particular for SGA and Dylan Brooks, where it's like, okay, we're calling an ISO right now, so everybody just stay
Yeah.
where you are.
Exactly.
But he's been coming off the bench, I believe, in these first two games. So
Hmm.
not even the sixth man, because I believe he's coming in after Nikhil Alexander Walker. But in their game versus Greece, we had some not ejections, but disqualifications because Lou Dort and Dylan Brooks and Dwight Powell all fouled out before the end of that game. So Jamal was closing. Canada had to close super tiny, right? Because without Dwight Powell, like they really don't have that many options at the forward. And in this game versus Australia, who likes to play quite small and fast, We'll talk a little bit more about them. They play quite small, so Canada was actually had some minutes where it was kind of RJ Barrett at the 5, and Jamal was able to keep up. Okay, when Canada goes small, are they able to take advantage of the things going small? I don't want to see, Jamal has a tendency to like walk the ball up the floor, whatever it is. He was not doing that for the most part. And like I said, the playmaking. He had a couple of like rough turnovers versus Greece in the first game, but in the game versus Australia, 5 assists,
Hmm.
0 turnovers, and there could have been even more if just some guys had made some more shots or whatever it is. But I will say there were some moments, particularly when it came to the shots at the rim and on drives, where I'm like, okay, you're moving better than you were before, but it's still not like you don't see the same kind of burst. There's not a lot of pick and roll in the offense that Canada is running, so he's got to create separation for himself, kind of in isolation and with off-ball movement and that kind of thing. And I think that he's not quite up to the level that I'd like to see from him. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't great. Like if the standard for him is to look like um, an all-star would in the summer, right? Which is not, peak, but just like or do you look like you're moving well? Are you able to get to your spots? Just look comfortable. I don't think that he was always at that level, but defensively, he looked great in that game. I
Hmm.
didn't even see his rebounds. That's always something that Malone is tracking. It's like Jamal's best games or his most engaged. Like you can tell when he has high rebounding numbers. And I don't even know how many rebounds he had in that game, but he had 2 blocks. He was really good in isolation defense, really like strong in the post, and he gets really like fired up. He had a couple of plays like that versus Greece, but I thought the level of engagement and impact on that end of the floor was a little bit more consistent in the game versus Australia. So that was really nice to see because that's just another indicator of like where he is athletically. But like you said, the 3-point shot is like what's going on here, especially catch and shoots, right? This has been
Hmm.
an issue since exhibition play. Well, since before exhibition play, as we saw in the playoffs. But his catch and shoots are just too slow, and the FIBA line is shorter, so defenders are able to recover to him faster. And he just doesn't look comfortable when he does have open shots. So he's often like trying to pump fake and drive. And I think that like the defenders in FIBA have just gotten they've gotten wise to that. Maybe part of it's because they watch his film from the regular season. That's just pretty common for him. I'd like him to look more shot ready on those
Yeah.
catch and shoots. That's something that could really help him get his attempts up and also just look like he's gotten more comfortable off the ball for sure. But he did have, like you said, that pull up three. That was really nice to see that step back. He shot like the highest on like step back threes last season of any guard over some number of attempts. And I'm just like, can we see more of this, please? And he had there were a couple of these like Jamal shots, right? Like he had the one where he sort of backs down Patty Mills and then he makes like this weird sort of like trick like two-handed push shot in the lane, and then he has another one where he's like coming off of movement, like comes off a pin down, catches a ball, whether it's on an out of bounds or whatever, and he goes for that little baseline fadeaway midi. And those are things, and he like cashes it, right? Those are things when I watch other players try to do them, even good ones, right? Unless you're like a Kevin Durant type. Like that's often a brick because lots of guys are like comfortable getting to their spot and whatever and pulling up. But it's not always easy to like get to your spot, be able to catch at the right angle, set the footwork right and the release so that you actually make that shot. And he makes it so often. And I'm just like, this is something that's really special about you that you're able to make these type of shots off of movement, despite largely being an on-ball guy. And those are the kinds of things I want to see more of. And he looked so comfortable. Like he'll have those moments, right, where he reminds you of like, oh yeah, this is Jamal. But then others where he's like struggling a bit to like get by guys or like whatever it is. But I am happy that like you said, he's not forcing it too often when he doesn't have an advantage or whatever it is. For the most part, he's playing the role of facilitator on this second unit, even when he's often next to at least one other um, guy that would be like a point guard, not a combo guard, so like an Andrew Nemhard or
Yeah.
um, Nikhil Alexander Walker doesn't play point guard, but he's not. He kind of was in the exhibition games in particular, like doing more Initiation, not so much in these first two games. So it seems like they've kind of ceded that to Jamal. He has played some minutes with SGA as well. So that's, that's just interesting. SGA
Yeah.
drives, Jamal shoots. Hopefully some of those shots can fall eventually. But yeah, he's playing facilitator, and that's kind of interesting to see because yeah, he's off ball, but he's also on ball quite a lot more than I expected.
Canada was like full court pressing Australia at the beginning of the game, which I think is interesting because you just don't see that a lot in the NBA. And you would think it made me think that Canada is trying to utilize their depth as well because they have a lot of NBA players in comparison to other teams in this tournament. And Jamal rested a really long time in the second half. And it was kind of interesting to see that rotation of guards where it's like RJ Barrett or Nikhil Alexander Walker or Nemhard, SGA, more like defensive lineups. Jamal has been resting for a really long time. He can come in and be super fresh and try and, punish Australia, who's now tired from playing the whole game and being, they don't have as much depth on their team. That was partly why I thought Jamal's getting less playing time, getting less shots. There were times where Dylan Brooks didn't pass to him. There was times Nemhard didn't pass to him. Whatever. Like we can be people can see it as like excuse making or whatever. I just think that they're not treating him as like a number one. Obviously, he's not going to be a number one with SGA. He's just not like the offensive like scorer that some Nuggets fans might be used to. So I'm not as concerned about him playing with Canada. And also, like, what is the realistic likelihood that he would be in shape right now after the offseason where he had the injury? How much time did he have to heal from that and like rehab it and then play in the Olympics? Because I almost feel like he would wait to like get in super shape after the Olympics when he has more time.
So, what I will say, and I think what a lot of people would counter that with, is that Kevin Durant hurt his calf, strained his calf, I think right before exhibition play started. I think he played one exhibition game on it and then sat the rest of it, came in the first game at the Olympics and made an immediate impact off the bench. Just being able to make shots and like use his length and like be a player, and didn't look like he missed a step at all. I think that's a fair count. It's one of those things where it's like we give a lot of grace to players that otherwise are consistent. They have an injury and whatever it is. But Jamal has not demonstrated that ever. So I
Yeah.
think it's fair for people to question, like, right, like, okay, yeah, but you're never consistent. So like, yeah, we would give you like credit or like cut you some slack because X. And yeah, you could say like the 2023 playoff run. What about that? It's like, well, that was a really long time ago and we're worried about you now. So like, can you give us something that would illustrate that you're going to be, ready to go when the season starts? And like I get that, and I'm not one of those people that is like expecting Jamal to look even like he does like regular season with the Nuggets on Team Canada because yeah, SGA is the number one guy and all of that stuff. So I tried to think about what is the expectation, or like what would make me happy. So it's not that I'm upset right now because like I said, like there are some good things and some bad things with Jamal. Like he's clearly not at, even 100% of what you would want to see in the middle of an off season, which is, way below where you would be to start a regular season, but still like, okay, you look solid and you look, again, comfortable getting your spots. Like don't look labored, right? He's not there yet. But what I'd like to see is for him to be comfortable getting to his spots and maybe some more efficiency. Like, okay, just make some shots. Like, the stuff that you're seeing from some of these other guys playing for their national teams over the summer. And yes, he is coming back from an injury still, it seems. But I guess part of it is just like, well, what is the timeline for when we can start to have like real expectations for how you're
Yeah.
playing?
That's what I'm like
Um,
getting at.
but right, but the question is like, what is that timeline? Like,
Yeah.
is it another 2 months on top of the 2 months that you've had since? It's just like this stuff starts to build up. And I'm not saying all of this to be like to illustrate that I'm particularly frustrated with it, but I can understand other people being frustrated with it. And there are even for me like some like boxes that I still want to be checked this summer
Yeah.
in the Olympics for me to feel, oh yeah, I feel good about how Jamal's going to look next season. Like I
Yeah.
don't feel good about how Jamal's going to look next season yet.
I'm not trying to like generalize all of Nuggets fandom and journalists, but most of the
Right.
concern that I
Yeah, I think
see
everybody's levels of concerns are different, and then
different,
it
yeah.
gets
But I think most of the concern is valid. Obviously, there are people who are like trolling on Jamal, or maybe the jokes go too far. Most of the concern, I think, is fair. Like, I'm not even trying to say that, like, if you're worried about Jamal, you're being completely crazy. Maybe I'm just being too, like, optimistic because I think there's still time after the Olympics. It makes sense to me that the Olympics would kind of be like a distraction to him being in super shape. Because, like, I'm just going to be honest, he doesn't look like is very passionate about this Olympics. And I don't know if it's because he's hurt or like still dealing with stuff, or he's just there because he's just trying to be there. Like, I think he likes playing for Team Canada. He wants to compete. He's a competitor. Him being selfless, so to say, and saying, I'm fine with SGA being the guy, or I'm fine with Nemhard maybe putting up more shots than me. We're all selfless. I'm just going to, do my part and do the best I can for this team. It's very like noble of him. We talk about him always being like a bright light merchant. Is the Olympics enough for him? I don't know. And I wouldn't blame him if he was like, not really. Because, I'd care more about the NBA personally if I was an NBA player of his caliber than the Olympics. But the Olympics is a cool honor to play in. That's great. Like everyone probably feels different about it. So I'm hopeful that there's still time. We have to hope that he's in shape coming into the season because Calvin Booth and them were talking about how it's pretty hard to get into shape once the season starts. Like you're always behind. If he comes into the season not looking like what we want, then I'll probably be more concerned then. And then if he has a bad season and a bad playoffs, then I'll talk about that then. But right now, I'm not like at a point where I'm like, we need to start thinking about Jamal's future or whatever. There's still so much time, but we do want to see flashes of this. I'm just like, it is just Olympic basketball at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think just the last thing that I'll say on it is we're already thinking about Jamal's future. We have been
Yeah.
since the
Yeah.
news of the max extension that has yet to be, decided upon. The endeavor to like be in shape and all of this stuff. I think that I've grown a greater appreciation for the fact of how much of a constant commitment it is, to the point where if I knew, if I could like read Jamal's mind and he was thinking what you just said, where it's like, well, get in shape after the Olympics, I'd be more concerned because it'd be
Yeah.
like, wait, you still don't get it, because like look at LeBron, like he never like goes out. Like I'm sure he has some nadirs in his conditioning regimen, because you literally cannot do the things that it takes to be at peak all the time. Like it would destroy your body, right? So you have to have there are some fluctuations. Every NBA player has an off season. Every NBA player has a ramp down and a ramp back up. But that baseline can't be like here. It has to be
Yeah.
like still in frame, right? And I think that's what people are, at least the reasonable ones that have reasonable concerns about Jamal, are a little bit worried about, because they're like, well, gosh darn it, your baseline is too low. Like we'd like to see it be
Hmm.
a little bit better so that we can feel good about, like, even if you're not 100% whenever the season starts, or like whatever it is. I just want to see him look how he looked at the beginning of last regular season, which like wasn't amazing,
Isn't a
right? Like
low.
they were
Yeah.
coming off they had clear championship hangover, but it was like he was comfortable getting where he wanted on the floor and like getting the shots he wanted, make or miss, like whatever. Like I don't care about that. It's just like looking comfortable on the floor. I think that's for me like what I want to see to be, like I said, happy. And I'm at like a 3 out of 5 right now, which I wouldn't consider happy because that's like a
Yeah.
C.
I think it would be
um
hard to say anyone could be happy with it because he has so much more he could give. And I do see from that
yeah.
perspective is like, you don't want him pushing it off. Would there be enough time where he comes off this season where he had multiple injuries and it was like a pretty grueling playoffs for him because he's playing through injury? You're going to want to take a break and try and heal a bit, but then you got to go like start playing with Team Canada and doing whatever that schedule is. Was there even time for him to be in shape to a degree that could be like promising or like be a positive sign? Because I'm like, I don't even know if there wasn't enough time.
Well, yeah, I think that question comes down to like what is the, I guess, accepted standard for the things that say an NBA player is doing to keep in relative shape even while they're injured. Or are they just doing nothing, right? Like I
Yeah,
don't think
I don't
either of
know.
us thinks that like these guys are like me when I get sick, where I'm like, well, I'm just gonna let everything go. I'm like sitting on my couch with Cheetos and watching like days of our lives or whatever for a couple of weeks. Like, I think there's still like things that they have to do to like maintenance wise. And it's the
Hmm.
stuff that we hear about that like even Jokic does, even, whether he's lying about touching a basketball all summer or not last year. There are things that we know he does with his weightlifting or whatever it is, just his baseline. It's a little bit different when somebody's injured, but I'm sure there are still certain things that you do because you can. There's other parts of your body you can work out. There's certain aspects of your diet that you can obviously maintain and all of that stuff. And this isn't a Jamal specific thing. I think it's more like I would actually like to know like what is it that players do when they are at different points of the season, at different levels of progression when it comes to like healing from an injury to stay in shape because like their bodies are so valuable. Like they can't afford to really like just let everything go.
Yeah.
Um, so that would actually be a really an interesting discussion to have.
And I was hoping, like, if anything, this Olympics could help him to be in shape, whatever that process is, just because you're playing, you're out on the floor, you're playing with
Right.
players, you're competing. So hopefully that just adds into whatever it is he's doing. And maybe he's still in the process. I don't know. But there's still games for Canada to play. We'll see how it goes. I think part of it is he probably just maybe doesn't know how to exactly fit with these types of players. I mean, all these players are used to playing with the teams that they play in a majority of the year in their NBA teams or FIBA teams. Yeah, we'll just see how Canada does, and we'll keep monitoring this story. It's part of why following this Olympics is so fun because we get to watch Jokic and Jamal and see where they're at.
Yes, but please remember to like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, all the things on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. If you're listening there, you probably already know that. We're also on TikTok. What's in a game NBA with like periods in between each word. I haven't posted anything there yet, but I'm working on it. Okay. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.